mode, Mavin. Is that all right?
Yeah, for me it's good. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I hope it's okay for everyone. I'm just going to turn off the comments. Yeah? And we'll come back up later. Hi, Masoom. Hi, everyone. I'm turning off commenting now. Okay. What happens if we go this way? No.
Oh.
We'll stay with this. Okay.
How are you, Akka?
I am good, darling. How are you?
I'm all right. It's very
Good.
sunny in London now.
Yeah. First off, I want to thank you for asking me to do this. And I want to thank Samarpana and Gayatri and the rest of the team, especially Hanish. He was holding my hands till this very second saying, you're not letting Mavin in. And that's one cue I did not have on this list of things that I should do to get this to the end, to see us to the end. So I want to thank you, Hanish. Thank you, Samarpana, for putting Mavin and me together. It's, I think, going to be special. It is for me. I also want to thank everyone who liked when we did our unannounced test run of audio, video, teaching Chitra how to come to 21st century on Instagram. So thank you. I just have to say that somebody put it in our COVIDian times. I find, and I have to thank all the entrepreneurial vision and the provision of platforms, Mavin, such as this, you know, where dancers and other artists have performed as normal, you know, as normal as performing from your living room and bedroom and staircase and lift can be, but also they have done unusual things, and including talking about themselves. Yeah. I myself find myself, my heart has completely been blown open by COVID. And I think there's been an astounding amount of trust displayed, you know, in this kind of risk-taking and offering these platforms to people. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think partly as well, I think, you know, globally, we're all in a place where we've kind of understood and also kind of become sensitive to each one's necessity to essentially surrender to the moment. So I guess there's a kind of bigger sense of humanity that we're all kind of exploring and are empathetic towards as well.
Totally. And so I think in response to that, I have to say, I want not just to thank the people providing the platforms, but all the people who have shown such generosity and kindness. Absolutely. You know, it's not like saying what you know, you have nothing else to do to sign up, but the kind of support that people have given to the people who put the platforms on, as well as the people appearing there. I just have to say this amount of trust on one side and the kindness and return, you know, I salute all of this. And so we've allowed ourselves to become so open, and I hope to continue that journey with you today, Mavin. So I want to welcome and thank Mavin. Virtual, real hugs, big ones, and kisses to you. There's a lot we have agreed in our exploratory conversation to explore today. Yeah. So that's going to go from your life to your art, from classicism and rasa, from abhinaya as a technique, to attaining trance-like heightened states, your relationship with music, even the underlying sexuality and its contribution to intensity. Of course, the meaning of what you call marrying Shringara and Bhakti, and yet of pedagogy and hard lessons, of devices and experience, and yet of living multiple lives, and seemingly either dancing one at a time, or is it many? I will ask you. So first we want to put your biography on the table and then get them out of the way, because a lot of these facts are available, right? Out there, if people go to, so that we can continue a flow of conversation, so to speak. And listeners can then, when we mention some names now, and when I say, oh, Merce Cunningham said this, you're going to say, huh, well, what is he going to do with Merce Cunningham? You can refer back and say, this is what Mavin going to do with Merce Cunningham. Okay, so we start as usual. You were born in Malaysia. Your mother Sri Lankan Tamil origin, your father Chinese origin, both 3 generations already in Malaysia. Yeah. What were their names?
So my mom's name is a beautiful name, Rati Malar. And my grandfather's name is Navaratna Singham. So extremely majestic. You know, you've met my mom. Rati Malar completely kind of condenses who she is. And my father's name is Kuku, is our family name. And his name is K. Kim.
And he was a professor.
Professor Emeritus of Malaysian history.
Yeah. Because I remember at some point in an interview over here, I think you were asked at some university saying, you know, you've been doing all this work. Do you think you're going to do a PhD? And you said, maybe both are okay, but I don't think so, not yet, kind of thing. But you did go around that question at some point.
Yes, I went to that. Yes, it's in it. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love academia. I do. And as I got older, I got more into it, actually, very much so. But then, you know, as we will talk later, I ended up actually working in an academic institution in a university, and that was an interesting experience in itself.
Yes, we shall talk about that. So just to quickly run through, at age 5, you joined for Bharatanatyam, Temple of Fine Arts, and you had 2 wonderful teachers, you said. And then from the age of 8, you also started studying Odissi with Ramli, Ibrahim, till about 17?
Just before my Arangetram, I would have stopped Odissi, so maybe 15, maybe.
15, okay. Now, it's interesting that you were doing 2 forms already at a very young age. We'll keep that in mind when we talk about your hybridity later. I will come to it. At age 10, Shri Adyar Lakshman sir, it's a well-known story of how he came into your life.
Yes.
He came to do some workshop and...
He came to conduct a series of Arangetrams for 3 or 4 of his Malaysian students. And in that period that he was there, he was teaching Aravu classes every morning, for which I was attending as a child. I have a very cute story about it, you know. I remember I used to have this Mickey Mouse watch, like all kids had in the 80s. And Sir always had this thing of, he would, especially in Tattadu, he'd go into 3rd speed and he'd just keep going without stopping. So he just keep going. You
do that too. You don't stay to Kanaka on 3rd speed. Okay.
No, not. And so what happened was everyone kept stopping except me. And I remember him saying, oh, people usually wear a watch to see how when they can stop. But this child wears a watch to see how long he can go on.
That's going to remind me of a question I want to ask you about Giselle.
Okay, sure.
When they come on their points.
Point, yeah.
I think that's really where you and Akram get. So anyway, you did your Arangetram after having learned with Lakshman sir. 1992, you did an Arangetram in Malaysia.
Yes.
And then you went to, Lakshman sir invited you and got you a slot.
Yes.
In the season in Mylapore, Mylapore Sabha in Chennai. And you were like all of 16?
16, yeah. Exactly 16.
Okay. Pushkala has a story on that.
Okay.
So I'm going to, you know, we've got 3 of your very favorite musicians who absolutely adore you. They have sent the music that reminds you of them and some thoughts to share today with you. So I'm going to play that, and I hope this is on.
The first time I saw him in performance, he was doing a piece on Parthasarathi, and vocal accompaniment was by his guru, Lakshman sir, with Sethuraman sir, who was one of the leading Bharatanatyam vocalists of that decade, or of a few decades before that and after that too. Now, both the gentlemen got into happy competition, improvising line after line while Mavin was doing the exposition of the story of Geetopadesam. And I was really struck by how this teenager, he must have been 15, 16, was really able to carry the singer's spontaneous manodharma and embellish it with his dance and savor the moment. Now, a few years later, I started working with Mavin to sing for him, which has been always a pleasure and a privilege. And sometimes we would do the kinds of performances that were purely abhinaya.
I'm going to hold it there.
Okay.
Because I will play it for you the rest of it as we go along.
So it's very specific. That performance that Amma is talking about is literally that performance in Mylapore Fine Arts Ward, which happened after my Arangetram. It was Lakshman sir and Madurai Seturaman. For anyone who remembers, Seturaman sir, of course, was also very well known for having sung on Vaijayanti Mala's
Oh yeah,
LP recording.
I have it. I have it.
Yeah. And yes, I remember that performance. That performance was a very significant performance because, as I said in another interview, it really then opened up a train of events that was to lead my path in a very specific direction. And Lakshman says Parthasarathi, it's one of those works where the guidance in terms of creativity and how to dramaturgically develop something through this element of manodharmam, because sir had, of course, very set choreography, which some students did, and then for some of us he just allowed us to absolutely just use it as a backbone and really to develop it in our own way. What is interesting for me is really, when I think about it, I've danced this piece many times, of course, since then. Until now, I still dance it. But that whole element of Gita Upatesham and Arjuna seeing Krishna in Vishwarupam and all that kind of stuff, as a 16-year-old, your recognition of the depth of it is on a particular level. So why I always attribute Lakshman sir with a particular training in terms of creativity and is because somehow he still, for a 16-year-old, guided you in a way that you would, for me at least, and I can only talk about my relationships with sir with me because it was so one-to-one. There was such a guidance in enabling the, as Pushkalama said, the ability to savor the moment in the most honest way as a 16-year-old would.
I have to, I will come back to it, or maybe we can, no, I will come back to this. I have written down what he said and you shared with me, which I thought was hilarious.
Okay.
But absolutely so right in how they taught us at that point in time.
I have a quick story about Shobhana Jayasingh, because I enjoyed so much working with Shobhana Jayasingh, who I worked with a lot as well. And one of the things I enjoyed with Shobhana is, I think between the two of us, we had a very a Tamil relationship. We would often speak in Tamil in rehearsals, and she was also able to talk a lot about her history of Bharatanatyam with me. So she would talk a lot about, her time with Samraj Pillai and training with him. And I remember her telling me this story of one of his very young students who was maybe 11 or 12. And she was performing Netrandi Neratile. And someone had said to him, why are you making this child dance Netrandi Neratile? She will not understand the context and the sahityam at all. And apparently his answer was, but there's such a beauty in the innocence of what the child perceives that to be.
So amazing. I mean, like, we were all doing, I was doing Yera Rara.
Yeah.
When I was like 11 years old or something for my Arangetram. I remember loving doing it.
Yeah.
Because I had to call, I had no idea who Marubari was. I mean, of course, he said God of love and Cupid, but, as a preteen, I mean, we hadn't gone there. I mean, this day and age, it's slightly different. But I want to hear about the story you told me about V.R. Devika's review of your performance.
Yes.
For Mylapore Sabha.
Well, I mean, to be fair, that performance, I always, as I was really in terms of spreading the word. And then also, she finished it off. She was very complimentary. about the performance, but she finished it off saying, "This boy will to give me a one program at 2 p.m. on a Monday afternoon." Word of mouth had spread enough that the whole Sabha was completely packed. And after the performance, Yekdanaman got on stage, and he basically on stage then and there said, this boy should inaugurate the season the following year, which of course in those days was a very big thing to inaugurate Krishna Gana Sabha season. Immense. And it completely changed my life.
Isn't it? You have to be both prepared, ready to take the opportunity, and sometimes it's just a blessing. You know, I always say when these things happen, it's not random. You can't predict them, but they're not random. They come to the ones who actually can deliver on that.
Yeah.
So from Krishna Gana Sabha, you went on to perform in places like Delhi and others, and that's where Merce Cunningham from New York saw your performance and invited you to do an apprenticeship in New York, and you went there. I mentioned this because he said something to you which was very interesting, and you referred to that when we were talking about young people today and Margam. And why Margam, and so in the context of creativity, we'll come back to that. But you did go to New York and work with Merce Cunningham, whose work is like, he has race horses for dancers, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, right? I mean, Cunningham was an experience because, first of all, I will say this, that the Cunningham training in itself is one of the most brilliant forms of technique possible. It's not done anymore because it is considered outdated today. So they don't teach it in schools anymore. But when I was there particularly, what was interesting was that a lot of the dancers around me were people who had danced a lot and then had decided to really deepen their work by getting into Cunningham technique. So they would have experienced, they would have been ballet dancers who had worked before, etc. And then they were kind of getting into, I was a 17, 18-year-old kid. So I was very young, number one.
It makes sense what he said to you then.
Yeah, and he said to me, I think he could sense, I always loved Cunningham class, but Cunningham work was something different. I love the physicality of it, but it is intellectual work and it is absolutely abstract work. So the young boy who loved the drama of classical dance found it very bland and not accessible. And so he did say to me, it's important that you, his exact words were, it's important that you leave and you go and purge out those classical roles out of your system before you will understand my work. I don't think I ever purged out those classical works, but I understood what he meant about the necessity for me to really delve into that area first.
Yeah. Isn't Cunningham the one who produced the work? I forget, it was something about throwing dice.
Yeah, chance.
Chance.
That's it. Yeah.
And that day they would decide by throwing the dice just before the dancers started performing.
Yeah, which we did a lot.
Huh?
Which we did a lot, even when I was working with random and, you know, a lot of contemporary choreographers, especially in the 90s.
I just want to explain that a bit, because I think if people haven't had the opportunity either of reading up his work or seeing the show, I just want to say that at that particular work, which I went to see, and he did a permutation combination and said, how many times you have to go see the work to make sure you've seen all the combinations or permutations of it, because they threw the dice and selected the music, threw the dice.
I'll give you an example of something that we did once in the studio as a practice research, which was amazing for dancers actually. We basically had developed phrases, movement phrases, that were from the alphabets A to Z. So I don't know, each phrase would have been, I don't know, 64 bars or whatever, but we had for each A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right to there.
6 of them, okay.
Phrases. Yeah. And so what you would get was basically based on that, it would be connected also to where on the stage it would be and the direction. And what he would do is every day you'd have basically on 2 sides, basically a piece of paper, 2 pieces of paper, and it would be like, okay, Mavin, A, Z, F, G, A. Exit stage after 44 counts. And so you'd be running off stage and basically seeing where you needed to go, what phrase you need to do, how do you need to connect it, which direction, run off, come back. So it was that kind of, number one, it was amazing training in terms of the brain. And number two, what it did in terms of rasa, actually, was it created an in-the-moment adrenaline that was not reliant on interpreting anything more than the unpredictability of the moment.
So the rasas, I think that the audience, at least I got, was both adbhutam,
Yeah.
also fear. If I knew the dancer, I would feel fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
So that's what he was aiming for, and unsettling the audience. He certainly, Merce Cunningham certainly got there. So anyway, so from Merce Cunningham, 1994, you came to London and you started working with Marion Sinclair, or
Yes.
Miss, as
Yes.
you very affectionately called her, and I've had a chance to meet her through you. And then she introduced you to contemporary work. And by 1999, I saw you at South Bank Centre, Purcell Room, performing No Male Egos as a double bill with Akram Khan, which has become like a seminal point in both your lives, as well as in South Asian dance in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
We will talk about that when we come to Akram, because we want to reflect back on it. But I also say I saw you then at academies, coming of age, where
Mm-hmm.
they strung you up in a harness.
Yes.
Like, I don't know,
On
5
top of the building.
floors at the top of the building. And that was adbhutam and anxiety. You know, you were just out there trying to recreate a Ram Gopal. So a lot of things have been put on you in the time period that you stayed here in England, because you didn't leave till 2007.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any quick comments on that thought? We will come back to your other life, but
Yeah. Comments on which part particularly?
on working with, you know, doing the amount of contemporary work as well as
Well,
doing weekend classes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing is that we forget that in many ways, actually, my life has been no different from the life of other contemporary dancers, which is a tremendously diverse range of work, very versatile, and going from job to job and project by project. So in that sense, I don't see it kind of highly kind of uh, uh, accomplished. You know, it was about also just getting jobs as well. But what I would say is that that in that time, what was amazing was that the kind of support and guidance for the kind of artist you wanted to be was very different. And as I keep saying, there was a commitment to a journey. I think it was less at that point about producing in order just to tick a box. Of course, the boxes were important to tick, and I think it's unrealistic for any dancer to think that we are not part of an agenda when we start. We start to work in an industry. It's how you play, how you understand to play that game. But there just seemed to be a bit more kind of commitment to the artists then,
which is lacking right now.
Yeah.
True. So at that time, as Garuda, we thought you had wings and you literally just flew off, you know, the stage and other places. And then you sent me a photograph recently when you said that you, and it's a good time to bring that up, because in 2007, you left for Malaysia.
Yes.
I know it's a difficult part of your journey to talk about. We will come back to that also.
Okay.
I'm saying we're going to have 3 sessions. I don't know if you knew this. We're going to have a 3-hour session. But, you know, at that time, you had said that, you know what, I'll come back to it. People wait, I'll come back to it. So anyway, after you went off to Malaysia.
Yes.
And you did a lot of work around in that whole part of Asia, Australia, etc. Then you came back to London and you went in to do a master's.
Yes.
From Middlesex University.
Yes, I got a British.
Like something had changed, and then you got a fellowship, and then
I got a British High Commissioner's Award to do my master's. And when I was doing my master's, I have to say I was very, very lucky because I had 3. You know, teachers are really destined for you in terms of how lucky you are. So that particular year that I was in, I had the iconic Alexandra Carter, the dance historian, who was one of my main supervisors, an amazing academic called Christina Kustula, who was highly political, and Chris Bannerman, of course, who knew me very well. And they really kind of, I think, placed academia in a way that was from the offset about me understanding not just to look at it objectively, but how it applied to my history as a performer, as an artist. So I, from the start, was kind of guided to find a synthesis between academia and practice.
So, have you therefore always watched yourself when you're dancing, when you're making work, saying, how does this look to other people?
I wouldn't, not until I started my master's.
Pardon me?
Not until I started my master's.
And then after that, you became really aware that
Yeah.
your has become political.
Well, there were several things that happened, particularly when you're studying things like critical theory and stuff like that, you really start to look at the body as a political construct. And I remember also at the time, I was never really interested in politics before. I kind of always just assumed as artists we do our own thing and politicians do their own thing. And my brother, who's of course highly influential in my life, my eldest brother Eden, at one point he said to me, I think there must have been some kind of elections going on. And I kind of said, very flippantly, oh, I'm not really interested or something like that. And he said to me, do you understand that as a dancer or someone who goes on stage, you're probably one of the most political things?
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because you are.
Yeah, we've begun to talk about it right now. And I think your hybridity, I mean, all those questions do come up. But I have to say, we're dealing now with an audience who are watching us, who are young, from around the world, from India, here, everywhere. So I just want to spread out the story a little bit. You did not finish your PhD, but you had some very good ideas which you shared with me. Would love to see you write about it sometime. Mm-hmm. But you got an invitation to go to Malta, and there you dealt with bureaucrats and otherwise, and set up a very successful state contemporary dance company, which also
and dance department.
And a dance department. So I have to congratulate you because, it must be an amazing thing to do. That's for another conversation, I think. Yeah. And then you did that for 8 years in Malta.
Yeah.
Your planned trips, and it never happened. I kept saying, I'm going to go see Malta. It never happened. And then you came to Akram Khan Company, which we'll also talk about. So welcome back to London.
Thank you.
So you've had a long life. I would say a long journey in your short life because you're still so young, and you've seen so many sites and you've had so many responses to that. I hope you'll be able to pick and choose. Now, so I want to go back and roll back to the story of the Krishna Gana Sabha performance. Mm-hmm. And what Adya Lakshman said to you, I think it was after that performance when you got a review.
About the Chinese magic. Yeah, that was interesting. So that was S. Anwar, who was a photojournalist at that time. I think now he's a historian. And, it was quite a dashing headline, if you like. But Sir was really a bit kind of disturbed by it. And then when I asked him, he said to me, it's very important that you work towards coming to a place where you being a Chinese boy doing Bharatanatyam does not become the determinant benchmark of how they judge your work. It has to come to a place that your dance speaks first. And so that really kind of engaged me in kind of understanding the responsibility really of my practice and how I would need to truly immerse myself in order to come to a place where where the dance spoke first. Because Sir was not at the same time, he never gave me a Hindu name to Indianize me either. So
I remember we have a wonderful, we have a whole play by Shane Shambhu who calls about how he got renamed by a guru.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sir was very kind of open to the hybridity that I came from, and even in terms of my ballet training and everything, but the dance had to speak first, and that is what there was really a mantra that he sustained very much with all of his main students, I think.
Mm-hmm. Male students, I think
male students.
Something else to you.
Yeah.
But I'll come around to that when I come to Abhinaya because of the tale you've told me. But then you come to ballet and you work with Marion St. Clair. She's almost like a foster mother. She was the one who told me about glucosamine, and I said that to Chandru Anna, and Chandru Anna said that he's been dancing ever since because of that. So bless Midge for that we can still see stalwarts like him perform. But you didn't even tell her for 3 or 4 years that you...
I knew that if I said that I was an Indian classical dancer, there would always be an element of, there'll always be an element of, you're going to learn it based on the fact that it's secondary to what you do. And it's very different when someone teaches you something in order for you to get a job in that discipline.
Yeah, you also said that she taught you, I mean, she introduced you to contemporary dancers, choreographers like Wayne McGregor, and you learned a lot working with people like that. But you also say, Mitch taught me how to dance in the theater.
Absolutely.
What in that?
Well, I think in our training, particularly in Bharatanatyam training, the development of style and nuance and artistry is very much on personal interpretation and artistry from an embodied stance. But there's something about the external objectivity of understanding space in a particular way. And also, I guess, with gurus like Lakshman sir and stuff, Lakshman sir was even though he was not dancing, because he was a Natuana, he was still very much a performer. So I did get that understanding in an unspoken way about the feeling of energy, the feeling of an audience. This and all he gave to me. But what Mitch gave me was really understanding the theater as a living space, and understanding your body in that space as part of a production.
Yeah, I think, yes, we've talked about that. Totally, as part of a production is so critical. I remember recognizing that and talking about it. She was the rehearsal director when I worked with you, when you were working with young and senior dancers like me, senior in age, that is, when we did the Royal Opera House project.
Yes.
Images of Varnam or something. Yes. It was amazing.
Yes.
Oh my God, that was the time when the towers came down.
Twin Towers. I remember we were in the studio.
Twin Towers. I remember that day. Oh my God. Where were you when the towers came down? I remember. But what else did Mitch say?
I don't know if you know the story from the dress rehearsal of that Images in Varnam project.
Oh, I know that where the CD didn't work.
No, about the curtain call when I got 2 slaps from Mitch. So we were doing our dress rehearsal, and it was just, I think, some press and maybe a few people watching or stuff like that. And we had our curtain call, and so we did the curtain call. And I've always hated bows. I've always feel really weird and kind of, so we did our curtain call, and then I went back to the dressing room on the first floor in the opera house, the green room, the green floor, rather it's called. And so she came in and she just gave me one. This is old school training, right? And she said, "What the hell was that curtain call?" And so I said,
all did what you asked us to do.
Sorry?
We all did do what you asked us
No.
to do.
It was not about that. It was about the way I was bowing. So she gave me a one smack on my face, and she said, "What the hell was that?" And I said, what the hell were you doing in that curtain call?" And I said, "Well, I always find it really weird, and I feel awkward when doing." And then she gave me another smack, boom, and then she said to me something that has stayed with me my whole life. She said, "The curtain call is nothing to do with you, my darling.
Oh.
The curtain call is the moment when you go and you thank the space for having given you that opportunity to dance."
Oh my God, I've never thought of it that way.
So really, ever since then, whenever I take a curtain call, it is really for me about really surrendering to the space and just saying thank you.
I mean, and you start thinking of, when you go back to the Natya Shastra, the first idea is of the space. When you worship all the directions. Wow, that really makes me think again, not just as a choreographing space, but a space that's receiving you when you're performing. Oh my God,
I think for me, what was interesting with my training from Lakshman sir to Mitch, and it was so funny that they never met just because of, but they were so similar in many ways, is that consistently from with their training, despite what some people might think, I was consistently challenged on my ego. And to really consider what ego is about in performance. I think that was very interesting.
Yeah, I do want to ask what else she said to you, because you did say she said something about you doing Bharatanatyam and...
Oh, yes. Yes. So after training with her about 3 or 4 years, one day I had I had a solo program or solo season, actually. It must have been 3 or 4 performances at South Bank of classical Bharatanatyam. And I said to her, I remember still going very nervously and saying to her, oh, Mitch, I'm performing at the South Bank. I hope you and Michael can come. And she went, what are you dancing? She was really surprised. And I said, oh, I'm also trained in Indian dance. And, her perception of, she had no idea what I did, and she was very curious, but obviously because there was a flyer and everything, it looked quite serious and quite professional. So she and Michael came for the program, and I think obviously they were very shocked and very happy. But the next day, it was also a time when 3 or 4 years, that's when you also start to audition for companies and stuff like that. So I had done a bit of with Ballet de Zaragoza and London City Ballet and stuff like that. But I think she wanted to ensure that my focus was in the right direction. So she came to me before class and she said to me, my darling, you will always be a very good ballet dancer and you must always sustain that and keep going. But you can be a great Indian dancer. And so make sure you understand where your focus is in your career. Keep your ballet.
It was kind of a slightly different way and kinder and more insightful way, or both, let me say, very good and propitious for all of us. Just the way,